But first, as I said last night, just when you think things couldn't get worse for the coalition, well, they have. Scarcely a fortnight after the Liberal National Coalition crashed to the worst defeat in its history, not only is the coalition itself split, but there's also talk today that the Liberal Party leader has ruled out any reunification of the coalition this side of the next election. Now, what a sorry 24 hours it's been for a political grouping that's run the country for 51 of the past 76 years. Already the blame game has started amongst the ill-informed. Some have criticised the Nationals for leaving the negotiating table too soon, particularly given Sussan Ley's bereavement. But it was Ley herself who set an arbitrary deadline to announce a shadow ministry on Thursday, and that, of course, has impacted coalition negotiations. Now, you've got to ask, why the deadline? The only real deadline for Ley is the resumption of the Parliament, and that's not until July. So why the manufactured haste? Has everyone forgotten that after a loss, Labor spends a month or so going through a whole convoluted election for a new leader and a ministry? Now, we all somehow cope with that, yet the Liberals here couldn't wait another week or two to announce their front bench. Wouldn't it be mad if that haste has blown up the most successful political marriage in federal politics, especially as history shows that a strong coalition is a proven pathway out of opposition to victory and to stable government. Coalition negotiations always involve give and take. As I said last night, I know that because I have been a part of 3 of them. But both parties normally appreciate that you can't let impatience, insecurity or greed for the paltry spoils of opposition derail them, especially as neither party could realistically expect to win government on its own. The established Liberal Party precedent for policy post-election is that everything stands unless it's changed. Now, that's been the practice for decades now, until Sussan Ley upended it all by declaring instead that nothing is adopted, but nothing is abandoned. Even though no opposition can deal itself out of taking a position on the issues of the day for 6 months while they go through their policy introspection and navel-gazing. When I was the Shadow Cabinet Secretary during the Abbott opposition years, every single week legislation forced the then joint party room to arrive at policy positions without the luxury of a lengthy review. Now, that's the nature of the Westminster system, and a ruthless Labor Party exploits this to wedge the other side. Throughout the Abbott opposition years, we ran a parallel election review process because you must be able to respond intelligently to whatever comes your way in opposition, as well as working up a coherent set of policies to take to the next election. Now, given the events of the last 2 days, there's got to be a strong suspicion here that the new Liberal leader is preparing to walk away from Dutton's pro-nuclear policy, as the other 3 commitments the Nats wanted were all specific and long-standing to regional Australia. It's noteworthy that while the opposition leader's vision statement published on Monday reiterated her party's traditional commitments to low tax and strong national security, it was silent on energy. By declaring that all the current policies, including nuclear, are in limbo, Ley's given all her colleagues a chance to relitigate every policy position. And that means there'll be arguments inside the opposition rather than the government's policy inadequacies being where the media focus. This is a mess for our country. It will now be much harder, near mission impossible, for the Liberals to win in 2028. Without a reformed coalition, and Ley today has ruled this out, there'll be 3-cornered contests across the country. Have anyone thought about that? There'll also be 2 sets of policies. There'll also likely be a donors' strike, given how unhappy donors already are. And the electoral arithmetic is brutal. Without the Nationals and with Labor's historic 93-seat majority, unless swiftly brought back together again, this rupture sets up the Liberals for 3 or more terms in the wilderness. Now, multiple MPs have told me that one of Ley's pitches for the leadership was that she could give almost everybody a front bench job. And this split will deliver that. Indeed, the Liberal Party will have more people in its shadow ministry on its front bench than on the backbench. What a joke. All with more salaries and extra staff. Is that what tipped it in Ley's favour? The Nationals' readiness to walk away from all of these spoils of opposition at least validates their claim that theirs was a position of principle. Today, senior Liberals were calling for this break to be mended and mended fast.
The sooner we can do it, the better, because the longer this goes on, the harder it is then to bring it back together.
It's my ambition that we can solve this issue and reform the coalition in this term of Parliament and go to the next election as a joint coalition again, because it's not in the Liberal Party's interest for us to be fighting the National Party. We already have to fight the Labor Party, the Greens and the Teals. We're not looking for any other political opponents.
James Patterson's right there, but Ley has ruled that out. Not before the next election, she says. And the longer the two main centre-right parties remain apart, the harder it will be to bring them back again. I mean, policy positions will be taken, criticisms will be made, and those divisions will become entrenched, allowing Anthony Albanese to simply repeat Bob Hawke's line from the last time the coalition split back in '87, if you can't govern yourselves, you can't govern the country. The Liberals must be a modern party representing modern Australia, says Ley.
We have to have a Liberal Party that respects modern Australia, that reflects modern Australia, and that represents modern Australia. We'll modernise and we will rebuild.
Modern Australia, modern Liberals, that was out there on people's call flutes a couple of elections ago. And this now seems to be code for saying that the party lost the election because it was too right-wing, with a message that inner urban Liberals are the way to go, that the party must purge itself of conservative Liberals, as well as reconsider nuclear power. But that would be a real misreading of the electorate and of global shifts in energy. Until earlier this year, the Dutton opposition was riding high in the polls, even though its only substantive policy on the table then was nuclear energy. It was only after Labor opened up its Medicare assault that this changed. Australians voting with the government to save Medicare, or so they thought, far more than they voted against the opposition because of nuclear power. Now, how can support for nuclear be hard right when it's the policy of the British Labor Party, the US Democratic Party, and with Germany also rethinking its previous opposition? At the same time, we've got Canada's new left-wing Prime Minister declaring he'll use oil and gas to remake Canada as an energy superpower.
When I talk about being an energy superpower, I always say in both clean and conventional energies. So what does that mean? Yes, it does mean oil and gas.
Now, it's no surprise that in his speech to the National Press Club today, Labor's campaign boss Paul Erickson said the party's embrace of renewables was key to Labor's success.
In the decade before 2022, Australia's policy settings barely acknowledged climate change, and there was no plan for keeping the lights on. Now we are taking advantage of the opportunities created by the global shift to renewables.
Now, of course, he would say that because it drives a wedge through his opponents, even though the reality is that Labor had to put Chris Bowen in the freezer for the entire campaign because he's so deeply unpopular. They buried their 2035 emissions targets for fear of spooking voters, and they were then forced to spend billions of dollars on household subsidies to buy support, so potent was electricity price pain. The tragedy for the Liberals is not that they had a nuclear power policy, it's that they never fought hard enough for it. Freed from the more conservative ballast that the Nationals have provided in the past, the Liberals now could simply Me Too Labor's renewables-only energy plan. And that's certainly the push from New South Wales factional players who have significant commercial interests in renewables. If the Liberals now caved in to cashed-up renewable industry puppet masters, this will become an existential crisis. After all, one of the main factors behind the demise of the United Australia Party, and this was the Conservative Party before the Liberals were established, was its dependence on funding from shadow financiers. It was to defeat this that Robert Menzies set up a Liberal Party that, at least back then, was actually responsible to the membership. Whatever happens, rarely has Menzies' dictum been more fully borne out that defeat disunites the defeated.